If you are planning to study in Australia in 2025, you need to know about this huge update. Now, Ministerial Direction 107 has been replaced by Ministerial Direction 111. Some of you might wonder, what does that even mean? Well, let's go through with that in this video. We'll start a video talking about the recap of Ministerial Direction 107. So this was introduced last year in order to reduce the student visa application numbers, which unevenly impacted the smaller and the regional education providers. And at that time, the government's aim was to reduce the student visa applications. And to be honest, no one in the international education industry here in Australia liked this Ministerial Direction 107. So on 19th of December 2024, the government replaced it with the Ministerial Direction 111. This Ministerial Direction 111 applies to the offshore student visa applications, which tells us how they are going to process these offshore student visa applications from 19th of December 2024. Now, before we look at how they're going to process these student visa applications, it's important to note that it applies to all the pending applications and any new student visa applications made on or after 19th of December 2024. Well, if you are still waiting for your student visa application outcome, it applies to you. If you have already got a student visa, then it does not apply to you. So Ministerial Direction 111 introduces two priority levels for processing student visa applications, specifically the offshore ones. So we are going to look at both these priority levels. Let's look at the priority 1 first. Priority 1 level means faster processing. Now it applies to those students whose education providers have not met the 80% of the indicative allocation thresholds for the year 2025. So you might wonder, what is this indicative allocation means? Well, if you remember in the past, the government has released a list of each education provider and the indicative numbers that they were allowed to enroll for the year 2025. That was the student caps we were talking about in the past. Well, the government couldn't get that through Parliament, so they are going to use these indicative numbers to prioritize the visa processing. Now, to make it easier for you to understand, let's say if the provider has been allocated 1,000 spots for the year 2025, any student who applies for student visa application for this education provider will be in a priority 1 processing if they have enrolled in less than 800 students. That's basically 80% of indicated allocation threshold. So if you applied for a student visa for a specific education provider, and if they haven't met this 80% threshold yet, well, your visa will be processed faster. There will be some other student visa types that will be eligible for priority 1. That applies to if you are applying for schools or higher degree by research, or if you are some sort of a scholarship student, especially those government sponsored scholarships, if you are a TAFE student, and all those students who are coming from Pacific and Timor-Leste. So they will be processed in this priority 1. Now, priority 2 is basically when this education provider has hit that 80% threshold, all these other student visa applications will be moved to what they call like a standard processing, which is a priority 2 speed. That could mean a slower processing. Now, the government is not saying that they will cap the student numbers to these indicative caps, but they're just saying that in year 2025, once the education provider reach that 80% threshold, they will slower the visa processing for that education provider. According to the government, this makes a fairer system for education providers. That could mean equal processing for larger universities and smaller colleges. Now, as a student, you might wonder, what does this mean for you? Now, this is a significant change. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the government couldn't get that student cap numbers approved in the Parliament, and obviously they are under pressure to reduce the migration numbers in Australia. So the government has introduced this Ministerial Direction 111 to manage the international student numbers. Now, the Department of Home Affairs website also mentions some key things that international students should do, especially those who are applying for their visas in 2025. The first one they suggest is to apply as soon as possible. This will be obviously helpful for you, as you might fall into that 80% threshold where the visas are going to get processed faster. So applying early will definitely have a huge advantage. The second one they are suggesting is to make sure that you submit a completed application with all the required documents. So don't submit any incomplete applications. Make sure your student visa application is complete and you have submitted all the required documentation. And last but not the least, they are also suggesting you to stay up to date with the processing timelines and any potential delays that might happen. And obviously the education providers will know about their enrollment numbers as well. So it'll be very important for you to stay up to date regarding the visa processing timeframes and some communication with your education provider regarding the enrollment numbers. Now, obviously not everyone was happy regarding the indicative allocations that they have got for 2025, but these are the numbers that government is trying to work with in the year 2025. Now, just a quick summary of what we have discussed so far. So Ministerial Direction 107 has been replaced by Ministerial Direction 111, which means that there will be two categories or two priority levels for visa processing, especially for the offshore student visa applications. Priority 1 will mean faster visa processing, especially for those applications from providers who haven't met their 80% threshold. And priority 2 will apply as soon as the 80% threshold is met, and processing for the student visa applications will slow down for those education providers. Let me know about what are your thoughts on this update. I'll look forward to that in the comment section below. And this probably will be our last video of this year. So I would like to take this opportunity to wish you all a very happy new year 2025. I know we are bringing this last update of the year pretty much at the end of the year itself, but hey, it has been that sort of a year where we had so many updates that is mind-boggling for both international students, education providers, and everyone working in the education industry here in Australia. But we really hope that 2025 will be a much better year for all of us. Fingers crossed for that. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so, as we try to bring all these updates and many other useful resources that will help your life as an international student here in Australia. If you are planning to come in Australia in 2025, then I suggest you to watch this video here, where I talk about how to prepare yourself for your travel to Australia in 2025, especially as an international student. So if you would like to know more about it, click that video here and I'll see you there.